Welcome back to a tutorial on BeamNG.drive on the world editor. So today we're going to be focusing on the terrain materials, specifically the terrain material editor, the terrain material library, how they work, and how to upgrade them and change them if you want to. So in the previous video, we set up a template map. We used the default template map the BeamNG developers came up with, and we saved it and we called it our map. We've talked about shortcuts before, so you should be pretty well equipped at this point to be able to start on the more advanced sides of the editor. I don't think terrain materials are particularly difficult, but they are kind of tricky and they require some forethought, some knowledge. So let's jump into them. Okay, so the first thing I want to show is I want to talk about the three level of detail render engine that BeamNG uses. So BeamNG uses Torque, and they use a three level of detail, and that is diffuse, macro, and detail. And those are the version 1, let's call it the old version of the material editor. The reason I bring that up is because the terrain or the tutorial editor map is currently on the old version, so they haven't upgraded. The developers have not upgraded the material engine pipeline to PBR, to the new version. Hopefully they will soon. In fact, I'm actually going to release a version of this mod after we finish this video, and so that way you can start from the new version if you'd like. Okay, so the way that it works with LOD is you have a base texture. It's a diffuse color. Diffuse is another way of saying, the albedo map that colors the render, right? And then you have other attributes like your normal, which is how it perceives bumps and depth. And then you also have your other maps if you have the engine to support it, right? Really, this only has those two. So it has normal and it has diffuse. Diffuse is the texture we see. So we're looking at a grass texture for most of this. And as we zoom in, the level of detail changes and the map changes from diffuse to macro. So think of it as like a three-tiered system. Diffuse is high, macro is medium, and then we keep zooming in and we keep going in and we keep going in. And then all of a sudden it switches over to another texture set, which is the detail texture. And you can see that with the individual blades of grass in the texture. Not the sprites, not the things that are rotating with me. Those are your ground. Those are your ground cover, but your texture that you can see with these little lines here, that's your detail texture. So kind of tricky, but think of it as the three levels. Top level is diffuse, medium level is macro right there, and then bottom level is detail. Okay, important to remember that. So let's hop into the editor, and I'm going to show you how that works. So we're going to go to Terrain Tools, Terrain Painter, and then over on the right-hand side, we can already see it. There is the diffuse, the macro, the detail, and the normal. I believe the normal actually has three different channels, the RGB. So on the red channel, it applies the normal to the diffuse texture. The green applies to macro, and the blue channel applies to detail. I might be wrong about that, but I think that's how it works, because otherwise you should have different normals for each level. But again, this is all the old non-PBR workflow pipeline. Let's go ahead and click on Material Library. Now that we know that the three levels exist, we can modify them as we see fit. So we see terrain material library, there's two terrains, right? There's two materials, grass and beach sand. And grass has the diffuse overlay texture. I can click on that and see what it looks like. So it's a 256 by 256 image. It's a .dds, which is direct draw surface. That's a pretty normal low file size, I believe. Works well with game engines file. And then we have our macro, which is macro grass, right? We have our detail. Notice that the detail doesn't have any color on it. So the way this works is it actually inherits from the next level up. So you start with the top, and then you get the green color of the grass. As you get closer, it starts to pick up some of the macro. So you see some more yellow in there, right? The macro looks like this, some more brown. And then as you get even closer, your detail picks up, and it's kind of gray, so you can see that's not it. Let's find it. Slide this over here. Yeah, there it is. Grass 01D. It's very gray. There's not very much green in it. So it uses that lack of color, and it inherits it from the next levels up. This is true with both pipelines. That's why I'm spending time on it. So, and then the normal as well. So let's change a couple of these values and see what happens. So let's go up to the top. So diffuse only has one field, which is size. So this is the repeating the size of the texture before it repeats, essentially. So 150 is pretty good, but if we wanted to see it tile, we probably could change it to like 10 and save it. Yeah, so you already see the difference. You can see kind of that size tile, or that image is tiling over and over again. Let's bring it to like 30. Yeah, so it's very repetitive, right? So 150 is a good number. You could probably do like 200 as well, and it will stretch out that texture and apply it to the entire map. It'll tile it correctly, right? The reason that it doesn't have any strength or distance is because the diffuse is pretty much always active, right? Is it's always impacting the lower two textures. So the size and strength, or excuse me, the strength and distance, I don't know why they go out of order, are applicable to these middle textures because you have, well, strength is self-explanatory. On a scale of 0 to 1, how strong is the influence of the texture, and then distance is the point at which it starts to show, right? And I believe this is actually in meters. So diffuse is always on, and then when it gets to, I believe, 350 meters from the terrain, remember the terrain block is this massive block that we have here. So if our camera is 350 meters, it picks up and switches over to the macro, or doesn't completely switch over because it's only 0.5 strength, right? That's kind of like an opacity scale. But it starts to impact what we see, right? And this is nice because when you're driving around in your vehicle, the far things are using the macro textures, even further is using the diffuse. And then the detail ones are close, so that if we're driving, let me turn on, if we're driving around, can I drive around? Pause, let's see. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so you can see that the textures for the grass are high resolution. That's because of the detail map, right? Same thing's true with sand. We go on the sand, we got high resolution sand textures. And if we back up from it, it becomes macro level, which is right there, and then diffuse. Okay, I think I spent enough time on that. Let's talk about the, let's just give you an example. If I change the macro size to, let's say 100 and save it, bam, all of a sudden that texture is twice the size it was before. I think, yeah, it was 60, approximately twice. If I change the strength, it's going to make that macro image really bright. It's really impacted, right? There's barely any transparency before it kicks in, right? So that's why the developers keep it at 0.5 for this particular map. And then the distance, if I change this to 100, let's say, it's going to stay on the diffuse, which makes sense if you think about it from a scale, longer than it was before until that macro kicks in. So it's now appearing at probably around 100 meters as opposed to 350, what it was before, right? I could bring it back to 350, and it's back to where it was. I could even bring it back here to, let's try 1,000. And it's going to show that macro texture because we're within the bounding box of what's supposed to appear, right? So all these numbers, they seem complicated, but if you play around with them, you start kind of figuring out what they do. You want to get, the best aesthetic for your map. Definitely take some tweaking. Detail, same thing. I'll just cover this really quickly. So strength, once you get close, let's look at, hard to see without with the ground cover on, but if I change this to 0.5, it's going to decrease the strength of the detail texture, right? At 2.1, it's almost non-existent, so it's barely there. You barely see it. We do have the normal impacting it as well, so that's good. Let me try to see if it does a 0. Yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. So 0.5 or 1 strength, I think it was. Yeah. And then if I increase the size, as you expect, let's double it. It's going to double the size of the texture. It's going to be more detailed and more closely zoomed in, right? So it was 3 before. And again, it's finding that sweet spot where the texture tiles, but it's not noticeable, right? If I did like a 1, I start to see kind of some tiling happen. It's not even that bad, but it's very small. So you don't want to be having too much grit almost in the texture. You want it to be big enough. It's an art. It is literally an art. We have level artists for a reason. And 50, of course, is the distance from the terrain before the detail texture starts to appear, right? I could change that to 100, and it will appear earlier in the zoom flow. All right. I think we've covered that pretty well. So sometimes it creates duplicate textures like this. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about, here's the old textures. There's 4 of them. Sand, diffuse, macro, detail, self-optimized. I went ahead and converted the old textures to new textures. And the way that works, now let's go ahead and do that in the editor to help explain. There's an option that says upgrade terrain material. So we're going to do that in this tutorial just to show you. So it's going to create a terrain material texture set. Going to attach it to the terrain blocks. And it's saying that all these things have new properties. So there's now going to be roughness, there's going to be ambient occlusion, there's going to be all of those PBR textures that we didn't normally have on the first model on the old version. I like to call this 1.0 for the old version, 1.5, because it mirrors the same thing for the for the car textures. Once the terrain materials are upgraded, we won't be able to fall back to the former system, so you want to make sure you are aware when you change it. Stuck in. Okay. So nothing changed that we can tell, except we no longer have macro and detail textures, right? It's all blurry. We just have the diffuse. So this is because, and we've talked about this before, right now the diffuse texture is stored in the cache in the temp folder, right here. So if we were to delete that or reload the level, it would just be black. All right, so we've upgraded the textures. The new style, instead of diffuse macro detail, it's almost the same, except it's base macro detail, base macro detail. And it applies that 3 texture schema, let's call it, to all of these different types of maps. There's a base color map, a normal map, a roughness map, an ambient occlusion, and a height map. Compare that to where it was in the first version. We only had color and normal. So this is a lot more of a realistic looking render than the original version of the map. So I've taken the liberty of going and updating all of the base textures for you. I can talk about that in another video and a one-off if you'd like, but the way that we change these textures, because they're all empty right now, is we're going to go to bulk change texture. We have, first let me talk about the edit terrain material texture set properties. Let me bring open the new template. So we have terrain, base. Yep. So we have a base color. We have a normal. We have a roughness. We have an ambient occlusion. And we have a height, H. Notice that the schema of the file name is t_terrain_base, right? So that's going to let me know that these are the 5 images that I need to assign to these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different categories of the material, right? The nice thing about this is you can differentiate it, but the way that a final level works is you've got you only have 1 set for base that apply to all your textures, and then your base color is referenced by that. So because I have 2 textures here, I knew why that was still here, but I only have 2 textures, so I only need grass and sand, right? So this map is telling the game where the grass is and where the sand is. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply that. So we're going to do base color, and we're going to do bulk change texture. So this is the part that we have to do when we're making a map ourselves. The other two steps, macro and detail, we can use the developer assets. We don't have to recreate them. We can use them. But the terrain base does have to be unique to your map, and you have to kind of work on it. So we've got all of our base images. We're going to press open. It's going to prompt us and says, we've found the following textures, and this is done because of that extension, right? Underscore B, underscore NM, underscore R. So as long as it ends with that in the schema, it will actually recognize and save you some time. So we bulk change it. And now the base texture for each of these maps is done, right? Cool. On to the next one. Let's do the macro texture. So in this case, I'm going to show you that I have the folders already kind of set up. So terrains, grass, I copied these in myself. And we're going to pick the B, macro grass. I'm very specific about naming because I don't want to get confused. So now we have all of our macro grass textures. And if we look through all the maps, they're there, normal, roughness, there, etc. And then we're going to do the same thing for the detail. So bulk change texture, grass, detail grass B. Great. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for the sand. We have all the maps set up for this one now. Beach sand, bulk change, terrain base, B. You can see how quick this becomes. Macro, sand, macro sand, B, bulk change, detail, bulk change, sand, detail. Done. Sweet. Okay, we're going to save it. It's not going to look good yet. Don't worry. We have a lot of other criteria here that we have to look at. And this is where the developer material file comes into play. We're going to change it. We're going to save it. It's going to look funky for sure. I want to see if I need to reload it first. Okay. Oh, right. I forgot when I reset it. Okay. I went and talked about that, but my ADD brain went in a different direction. Base texture size, macro texture size, detail size, these have to match the image size, right? So if I look at the image size, 1024, 1024, they're all 1024. And that's consistent for the detail as well. You can choose different sizes for the categories, detail, macro, right? But I think it's a good idea to just make them consistent. 1024 should have plenty of detail. You can choose, what is it? 2046, 2048 if you want. If you want to go up, multiply it, make it bigger, you can do that. So you need to set the size for the texture set. So that's 1024. And since I know all of the categories are the same, apply the changes. There we go. Don't worry about it being funky looking. I promise you that's normal. So right now we're seeing, looks like miniature versions of the map. The reason for that is the scale is off. So this is using a 256 texture image as opposed to 1024. The nice thing about the schema or the texture set is when you change base mapping scale, and it says this here, size in meters, it will automatically change for all of them for the base 1024, 1024, etc. Let's save that. Looking good. So our base map is basically done. Base color. We should do the same thing for our beach sand. 1024 and save. Now the sand looks good. But when you notice when we zoom in, things start looking funky, right? Got some dark spots. So that is where these other fields come into play, right? Macro, right, where is the middle texture. So this is where the scale, the strength come into play, and also the macro distances at the bottom. So just to reiterate, you've got your different maps up top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then at the bottom you have your distances, just like it was in version 1, except it's a global setting for the entire material. It's not per image, right? Before I was saying, all right, I want my macro to be 350, right? At 100 for the distance between the camera and the terrain. Now this is a setting you can set up right here, macro and detail. So I'm not going to go ahead and fiddle with these. In fact, I have a better idea. We already have a basin, which is great. Let's go ahead and drag some files from a developer map. So I'm going to go ahead. I have a pre-built art terrain. So this is the original materials.json. I'm going to look at it real quick. So you have beach sand 2. There's that second one. Grass 2. Okay, so a couple of these are duplicate. It doesn't actually delete anything. It just kind of keeps the original one. So I'm actually going to go through and remove that. So we don't need grass 0. Delete. This one is the version 1. This is using diffuse. That's your dead giveaway. Delete. And then this is the one that's version 2, version 1.5. So we can see all the base, height, macro, normal. It's all there. It's good, right? And let's take beach sand. We don't want that one. Let's delete that. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to reload the map. And this is a good test about the temp files. I should save it. Okay, let's find our map here. Our map. Map. Our map. There it is. Let's see how this is looking. Okay, not bad. Let's look at the materials. Good, so we don't have the duplicate beach sand anymore, which is nice. And you can see that it kept the version update, so it's got the same material texture set. Everything's kosher. And then the only thing that's different now is the detail, right? So before I bring over the version that I made, I'll just kind of change some of this just to show you, right? So this is all the default values for like macro, for example, are high, right? So they don't say this, and I actually just found this out recently, but the macro strength is 2 fields. This is the near and the far, right? So if you have that setting specified here, start far or near far right here, these values, that first number is when the strength will kick in at 10 meters, right? Which is near. And then the far, I believe, is the second number that will kick in at 100 meters. So you can have kind of a range of strengths for that. I'm going to lower it to like 0.1 just to show you. Save it. We already have a better looking map because the macro is not nearly as intense, right? Let's do the same thing for the detail. Let's do like 0.3. The detail looks better now, right? It's pretty tiled, so we got to adjust the size on it, but not bad. The default values are 1024 that we change for the scale or the size. We can change that as well. So if we want to have a bigger mapping scale, we could do like 300. Looks pretty grainy. Let's bring it down a little bit. Let's do like 150. Not bad. Yeah. We're also getting some normal intensity here, so they each have their own strength values. So if I lower the normal for the macro, let's do 0.5 instead. That looks better. See how it's less bumpy, right? Maybe even lower than that. So I can go through and change these to my liking, or I can just use the developer values. So let's do that. Okay, so let's open up the folder again, and then I'm going to drag over. This is the one that we're currently in. I'm going to drag over a version that has the developer values. And I found this in the developer folder. I'm borrowing 2 textures. I'm borrowing grass and sand. Grass I'm borrowing from ECA, from East Coast. Sand I'm borrowing from Utah. So I found those values that they have set up in their configuration. And now I'm going to reload it. And let's see what we get. I love that you can have. Yeah, sorry. Okay, great. Sweet. So now we have the developer fields with the textures that we supplied. That looks great. Looks really good. Okay. So this is the exact same map, but now with 1.5 textures. Okay, the thing about 1.5 textures, so some would argue that because the old version looked better, right? The way that it works is you have your base image. Let me find it. Your base image right here. This is exactly what the game sees from top down. If I hold this up, flip it upside down. The same image, exact same. So this determines where the colors go for the whole map. That being said, I have the exact same painting already. Well, it looks like I put a spot of grass there. But case in point, if I did sand all over this place and I zoomed in, there would be no grass, right? But it's still inheriting the base color image. It's different from version 1. And some people actually like the ability with version 1 to be able to have, one diffuse color that you can paint, right? If we did this in version 1, you would see yellow sand. You wouldn't see green here still, right? You also wouldn't see ground cover on top of sand. But it does work better for performance. It's referencing one massive image as opposed to, multiple diffuse textures essentially. And it also looks better from a PBR standpoint. Okay. So now that we have that kind of covered, and I know it's confusing, I'll probably make some more videos about it. Let's talk about Alex's tool. Okay, this is Alex's tool. Alex Klein something or other. You may have seen this, BeamNG tools from Mapbuilders. I'll put a link in the description. One of the features that is in here, it's really good. It's a really good tool. There's you can shrink maps, basically reduce the amount of size of it. Copy assets, not necessary, I would argue, because you can reference assets like the previous video. But copying terrain materials, right? I did it manually. I went to the developer mods or developer folder, and I went to Utah, for example. I went to art, I went to terrains, and I grabbed their main.materials.json file. And I took grass, took this right here, took that, and I added it to my materials JSON file. So instead of doing that in the code, you can just use this UI to grab a source map. So you go to levels, and let's say Utah, right? It's going to unzip that safely. It's not going to overwrite any developer maps. And then you say, I want to copy those, some of the terrain materials to my target map. I'm actually going to use my current folder, rmap, select. Oh, shoot, I need to do folder, this one. Current, levels, rmap, select folder. Sweet. Don't worry about errors. Sometimes that's because of developers. But it's going to find the targets. Let me bring this up. It's going to pull the terrains from Utah, and this is the name of the terrain. Dirt grass, dirt loose, dusty. If you load up Utah, these are what you'd see in the terrain editor. And then we can pick the ones we want to save. So let's say I do grass, right? I'm copying the grass from Utah instead of the ECA map. The one difference with Alex's tool is instead of using a base color map that has all of the preset colors like ours does, like this, he basically says, I'm going to make the whole map for this particular material just be one solid color. So that way you can pick a green if you want. or a gray. And it works pretty good. Not recommended to have too many of those. The developers kind of want you to bake everything into one root base and then have that reference in every texture. But for map making, you can do that. So I have one, for example, show you. On my map, art, terrain. So I use concrete, and then it's a full 1024 texture for concrete, and it references grayscale. So for concrete, I have a 496, which is the size of my map. Grayscale concrete texture. Actually, I think it's this one here. Pretty much grayscale. And I also have one for, I call it brown, but it's for mulch. So this is the detail. And this is the base, right? Brown _ B. And at the end of my map, when I'm satisfied with it, I'm going to merge all of those into a single base color. So you'll have grass, you'll have water, everything's going to be referenced here. But until I'm happy with it, I'm not going to do that for quite a while. Okay, let's go ahead and copy this over. So we're going to do preset grass, and I'm going to replace grass, right? So copy terrain materials, and then let's reload it and see what happens. Our map. Because I chose to replace it, you can see now the grass texture from Utah is here. And it also brings the ground cover, which is super cool. I almost wonder if a gray would have worked better, but there's that green. Yeah. And the problem with this is it doesn't have any blending. So when you have a single map, you can blend you can blend a lot better, right? But when they're individual base maps, they don't blend. All right, so let me end with comparing some of the developer maps, just to show you. So right, so this is mine, right? This is one of mine. I'm gonna bring them up side by side here. So my grass and my roads, my asphalt, are referencing this map. And you probably have seen it in the background. There's a bunch of blue houses. Those are my way of determining where the houses are. And developer ones, let's see, developer base. West Coast looks like this, right? So their base. Notice that the green isn't very bright, kind of a diffuse green, if you will. And then let's look at West Coast as well. So this is the way the developers do it. They have all of the base colors in one image. And then if you change this, like if I put a blotch of green right here, it would show a giant green splotch on top of the road, right? So this is the key. This is like the main key map that it uses. Yeah. So you kind of want your map, if you're going with version 1.5, to look like this in the end. Okay, I think that's it for this video. I will release the template map that I made, which is right here. It's version updated template level. Basically what we just did, except a version 2 or 1.5. Now we'll call it version 2. And I will also link Alex's tool if you want to check it out. Great, hope that helps.